this in me. I have this in me because I'm from there.
No, I'm going to ask you about that.
Okay, then
I'll
wait for that question.
I'll come.
So they had one plane. The Egyptians attacked. Israel had nowhere to stop them. One man got up in a single engine plane and threw soda bottles out of the plane. Soda bottles. Soda
bottles.
The big old soda bottle you had to push to get the water out. Because when those bottles fell out of the plane, they made a whistle. And when the Egyptians heard the whistles, they thought it was bombs. And they fled. So God saved Israel with soda bottles.
This is remarkable.
Oh, it is. People don't know that.
They had only one plane.
One plane, one cannon. And not much besides that from weaponry. Because the minute Ben Gurion made the announcement, the Arab armies attacked. Golda Meir didn't have much time to get, it was such a tight time for them. She had to go to America after the declaration in November, had to come back, they had to buy the weapons. A lot of those weapons didn't come right away. Later, after that war began, they began buying weapons and so on. Some of the planes that were flown from Czechoslovakia had to fly straight into the war. Many of the Holocaust survivors came off the ships and went to fight, having no experience in war. Many of them were killed unnecessarily. Remember when we went to Israel, you saw all the tanks? That area is called Latrun. Latrun was the stronghold for the Jordanian army to keep that street, that road blocked to Jerusalem. So the Jewish population in Western Jerusalem was starving because they were blockaded by the Jordanians. So Ben Gurion had no choice but to send people from the concentration camps straight to the field to fight. But God gave them a victory. Think about the victory with one cannon and one plane in the beginning. They won the war when General Montgomery, the British general who won the war with the Allies, he and Patton and others, said, there's no way. He gave Israel 3 weeks. He said, because when you look at the real picture, 40 million against 600,000, and the 600,000 are not all in the army, a very small portion are fighting. What chances do you have? Zero. If you look at the picture, the natural picture, he said, 3 weeks later, they'll all be dead. It didn't happen because God was in it.
Amazing.
And not only did they win the war, they even occupied land that was given to the Palestinians by the United Nations.
How did they manage to turn down the offer of Uganda and come here?
Let me go back to that. Theodore Herzl had the first conference in Switzerland. In that first Jewish Congress, the British wanted to somehow help the Jews because many of the people in the British government were actual evangelicals. But some of them were not, who wanted to help the Jews, so they offered them Uganda. He accepted Uganda because he never thought that Palestine would ever become a reality.
Interesting.
All right, so when he introduced the idea of Uganda, the Jews that were in that conference in Basel said, no way, we're not going to do this. They rejected it. And it was a very rough time for Herzl at that time, Theodor Herzl. But God used him in a very powerful way to establish the vision for a Jewish state.
Interesting.
Rejecting Uganda because the conference said no. That's when the British evangelicals stepped in, including the Prime Minister of England at the time, who was a Christian evangelical, and said, okay, we will help you. We will help you by establishing it, since the Jews didn't want Uganda or any other nation. We'll help you establish your country. But it was a very difficult decision to make, but they made it because God was in it. And many of them knew it was prophecy. When I interviewed Shimon Peres, I was with him twice, the former president of Israel. I said, did Ben Gurion know? How I wish I could have interviewed Ben Gurion, but this was before my time. I said, did Ben-Gurion know he was fulfilling Bible prophecy when he established the state? He said, that's why he did it. He said, when the world was screaming at him, no, you can't do it, he said it was the Bible that gave him the force and strength. I was amazed. I said, are you telling me that Ben-Gurion was moved by the scriptures? He said, that's all that moved him is the scriptures.
Remarkable.
Remarkable. Especially the prophecies of the prophet Ezekiel moved him. I was told that by Perez, that the prophet Ezekiel had such an impact on Ben-Gurion's life because he read the Bible so much. And I have that interview on tape. I was stunned when I heard that because I'm thinking politics. I'm thinking Ben-Gurion made the decision because he thought we have enough help and whatever. He had nothing. No weapons, no army.
His faith
No
was in
support.
the scriptures.
The scriptures. He said, God gave us the promise. In fact, Weitzman said before him, he said, even though the Almighty gave us the promise, we don't know how we'll fulfill it. And Ben-Gurion stood and said, I declare Israel a state, knowing he's going to have a war the next morning, knowing it could not happen, knowing no one may recognize it, knowing there'll be no support.
Interesting.
But he
Now,
stood on the word.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Recently, Pastor Benny and I were in Israel, and we visited certain sites, including where he grew up. In fact, his former school, and then he also showed us where he was born. Interesting. Now, lots of things have changed since your growing years in Israel. What was it like then? Tell us about your childhood in Israel and the changes that have taken place.
Well, first of all, when I grew up in Jaffa, I was born a block away from the house of Simon the Tanner, which is in the Bible. We grew up, people always ask me, what are you? Well, by culture, a Christian Arab. By origin, Armenian and Greek. My mom's mother was pure Armenian. So I have Armenian blood, big time, on my mother's side. And my father's people came from Greece to Egypt at the time because of trade. My grandfather, my dad's dad, almost became a Greek Orthodox priest. He spoke fluent Greek, but it didn't happen. His brother was a born-again preacher, of all things, which I did not know when I was, a young man. So when we grew up in a very pleasant environment. I don't remember anything
You were
happening.
born in Israel.
Israel, of course. I was born in Jaffa. December 3rd, 1952 in Jaffa, Israel. So when I was born, the memories I have of my childhood were beautiful and pleasant. We had a beautiful upbringing. My dad, my mom brought us up very disciplined. When we came home, we had to stand at attention when my daddy came home and had to kiss his hand. It's our culture. So when my father came home, all the kids would line up and come and honor him by kissing his hand. Nobody ate till he ate. My mom fed the family, and we all looked the same. We all dressed alike as little kids. So we had a really beautiful life. Monday to Friday, school, Saturday on the beach, and Sunday was church, and that's about it. So every week was the same thing. Now, my dad was very involved in the government. We did not know what he did. He had an unofficial position as mayor of Jaffa. So my daddy really was not mayor because it was not official. He was given that position by the mayor of Tel Aviv, but his job really had to do with other things he was doing. It was more of a cover, to be honest with you. So we saw a lot of generals in our home. We saw a lot of people from the military. Moshe Dayan came to our house for dinner. Moshe Dayan was an amazing general of Israel. He won the 56 and 67 war. He was never prime minister.
What was he in the office?
He became later foreign minister.
Foreign minister of Israel.
Later, yes.
Later.
Yeah.
Who was the prime minister at the time?
At the time it was Ben-Gurion. After Ben-Gurion was Sharet, and then they went back. Ben-Gurion went back to being prime minister. After him came a dear man named Levi Eshkol, and after Eshkol came Golda Meir, and after Golda came Rabin. So it was mostly the Labor Party that was in power. But my daddy worked with the Labor Party, and he was very, very involved with them. So we saw a lot of, like even gold that came to our home and so forth. So he was very busy. We immigrated to Canada in '68 because of threats on his life, because he was too involved with the government, and we all left. So I knew none of this. I was too young to even know what was going on. So when I got saved, I wanted to know more about my dad's involvement, and I found out he was quite well connected. But my love for Israel...
But you were already 14 years old.
14 when we left.
You left Israel.
Correct. But so I didn't think much about anything in those days. I got saved when I was 19, and when I was 19, I joined what was called the Catacombs. The Catacombs was a large youth ministry under the ministry of Merv and Merla Watson, who wrote many of the Jewish songs we still sing today. Jehovah Jireh was written by Merla Watson, and a whole lot of songs, including one of the ones you sang at the church in South Africa when I was there, written by her. So Merla was very famous, still is living in Jerusalem, a very famous writer. They're the ones who took me in the early days. So I became a part of what was called the Catacombs. They named it after Rome. So I became very involved in Christianity and Christian Zionism when I got saved. Not really even knowing there was such a thing as a Zionist Christian, because the way I see it is, it's in the Bible. God promised the land to the Jews, and that's all there is to it.
And it was the land of your birth anyway, so you would naturally...
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, but when I lived there, I didn't think about that. Would you believe it if I tell you? I did not even know Jesus was a Jew when I lived in Israel.
You didn't know Jesus was a Jew while you were in Israel?
No, because nobody told me as a child.
Interesting.
I had a fight with one of the kids in school. I went to a French school, Catholic French school. And one of the kids in my class, I was probably 10 years old, I don't know, who told me Jesus was a Jew, and I got into a fight with him. I said, no, he can't be Jewish. Because nobody said he was Jewish. I'm thinking the whole time Jesus is Catholic. Okay? So I went home and I said to my dad, I said, is Jesus Jewish? He said, yes. I was in shock, and I was in a bigger shock when he told me that Mary was also Jewish, because I was convinced Mary was Catholic. That was my mentality. You have to understand, Pastor, I grew up in a very religious home. Every day, Monday through Friday, in the morning at 8, we went to Mass. It was mandatory. I got on my knees on the rocks in school, and every kid in that, you saw that, French school, we had to repeat the Lord's Prayer and the Creed and pray to Mary every morning. We had no choice.
So you used to be Roman Catholic?
Very Roman Catholic. I was taught by the Roman Catholics. So I grew up in a French Roman Catholic school all my 14 years of my life. So think about, I was a kid kneeling on this horrible rock in Jaffa, having to repeat the Creed and the Lord's Prayer and Hail Mary, full of grace.
Going through some penance.
Very much so. I knew nothing about the Lord, nothing. I wasn't saved. But I knew everything about the Bible, because it was mandatory to read it in Hebrew in class and in French, of all things, at catechism. So it was, when I was a kid, preschool was also a Catholic school. A little further down on that Yeffet Street, I didn't show it to you, was the preschool, which was run by Catholic nuns. We moved over to the school that I showed you, run by Franciscan monks. It was all Catholics who would walk around with big sticks, and if you didn't, they'd let you have it if you made a mistake. And the toughest of all were the ones who taught us the Bible. They walked around with a big stick and asked you questions about whatever you had to learn. Every day, catechism. 11 in the morning, I'll never forget that, was our class.
So were you already in Canada when you were born again?
Yes, I knew nothing about the new birth experience when I lived in Israel. When I lived in Israel, I was religious, went to Catholic Mass Monday through Friday, went to a Greek Orthodox church on Sunday, and I was the altar boy in church. I was the guy who carried the cross behind the priest who was doing the incense, chanting Gregorian, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison. That's what they did. I remember that. And all that smoke came into my face, almost choked. So that was my life. It was catechism. I mean, it was the Catholic Mass every morning, Sunday Greek Orthodox. And nobody told me Jesus was Jewish. Till my dad, I had to go ask him because I got into a fight with a kid. But when I came to Canada, having all that Bible in me, would you believe it if I tell you one of my assignments in my class was I had to paint the entire New Testament in order. So I had to draw.
What does that mean?
Paint like pictures. Draw.
Yeah.
So I had to draw from the nativity right to the cross and the resurrection. So they gave me, the assignment was to draw the life of Christ. So I had to draw. I can't do it now, but I used to do it then.
Interesting.
I had to draw and then color it. So little baby Jesus in the manger, and then he's in Galilee, or he was baptized in the Jordan River. So I knew the whole Bible. I had to draw it. And that same school taught us the Old Covenant in Hebrew. I had to read it in Hebrew when I was a little kid. But I wasn't saved. So when I came to Canada, my daddy...
By the way, you speak and read Hebrew.
Oh, fluently. Oh, yeah, of course. We had to, or we got it
I've got
got it by the priest.
I've got another thing I want you to talk about. You know, a lot of people say, many of us do say,
Yeah.
that if you want to know God's calendar for the world today, look at Israel. In other words, looking at Israel, we can say certain things about where we are in the world and how close we are to the Lord's coming. Tell us something. Where is Israel in prophetic language in the end times?
Okay. If we look at what God says in Deuteronomy, he says that the nations basically would line up according to the sons of Israel. Now, I've read that many times. I didn't even understand it back then when I was saved, even afterwards. But Pastor, if we look at, and now that I'm a Christian, a preacher and so on, been in the ministry all those many years, I've had to train myself to understand that Israel has a lot to do with Bible prophecy. And Israel is the prophetic voice, basically. If you look at what God did prophetically, massive events took place after 48 in the church and the world, which cannot be ignored. It couldn't be by chance. I'll give you an example. 48. In 1948, when Israel was established as a state, following that was the healing move on earth called the Voice of Healing Days. Gord Lindsay, Branham, A.A. Allen, Oral Roberts, so forth. But nobody was paying attention to, is it connected or not connected at that time. Some did, most did not. But other things happened at that same time that were ignored by the church and the world, because we saw the rise of communism after 48. It was already there, but we saw changes on earth, massive changes in the late 40s. Then something else happened in 1967. These are key years prophetically. 67, Israel, Jerusalem is restored to its own people after 2,000 years. What happens in the church? The charismatic renewal, the same year, is when the charismatic movement was born. Now, maybe it's all by chance, maybe it has nothing to do with it, but you can't ignore those events. It was after 67 that man went to the moon. So we saw changes in the spirit and in the natural. 73 was another key year in the history of Israel, when President Sadat and President Assad of Syria deceived Israeli intelligence and invaded the Sinai and the Golan Heights. Israel was almost destroyed had they not had deterrence in their atomic program, which most people don't even know about. That Golda Meir use the weapons, weapons, to basically blackmail the United States. That's really that's why Nixon responded very quickly. She said, if you don't send us weapons, we have no choice but to go nuclear. And Nixon had to just give her whatever she wanted. There's an amazing story called Golda's Balcony on this. It's just incredible. So Golda Meir, Ben Gurion established their nuclear facility in Damona in the Negev after Israel became a state with the help of the French. So that was used by Golda to really win the war, because Nixon gave her all the weapons she had wanted. But that event triggered something in the spirit. It was that same year TBN was born. Christian TV was born. So you cannot deny 48, the Voice of Healing, 67, Charismatic Movement, 73, Christian TV. It's just, okay, maybe we say it's all by chance, it's all by chance.
There are too many.
But too many of them. And then other little details that I haven't even mentioned. If you go back to the Balfour Declaration, things happen in the church, not very, headline stuff, but they happened. Many things were happening spiritually and naturally. Now we are, I believe, we are coming into another headline, which I think has to do with probably Iran. We don't know the big headline at this point. We've been guessing. Well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. But nothing as major as 48, 67, 73 has happened yet. But I think we're coming to a very major event in Israel's history that could probably spark the greatest revival on the planet.
Absolutely. This year, for the creation of the State of Israel, will be 70 years, which is very, very significant.
Very much so.
In the Bible.
Yeah.
70. See, the certain things that the Lord said, like the prophecy of Jeremiah about the Lord accomplishing 70 years in the desolations of Israel. Daniel picked up that prophecy as well. And it tells us that something significant is about to happen in the world in 2018. And for the church, I believe we're going to see remarkable things in 2018. What do you have to say about this?
Well, I think what is happening today, and it's very puzzling when you look at the whole puzzle. Nobody seems to know exact details, but you have to put a few things together. We still don't have the real picture, but a few things together. Number one, technology. Israel is becoming a leader in cyber technology. Probably already number one.
Cyber technology.
Very much so.
Probably number one already.
Already we're not sure, but a lot of people think so. The second thing that's happening is the breakthroughs in medical breakthroughs in Israel. Your phone, my phone, half of it is Israeli invented. A voicemail, Israeli. Cameras on our phones, on and on. So they're already changing the face of the earth with their technology and brilliance. Today, I was looking at CNN because this fire is happening in California. And the police in Los Angeles, California, this morning, released a news report that said, do not use your GPS if you're driving through areas where there's fire, because the GPS only goes by what traffic is on the way, not what fires are on the way. The only app that tells you where the fires are is an Israeli-made app called Waze. Think about that. So on the news it says use Waze, W-A-Z-E.
Which is Israeli.
Very much so. Invented by religious Israelis of all things. So the little app called Waze that most people use now worldwide can actually tell you where the accidents are, where the fires are, and so on. Details that we're not getting through GPS with other things are on our phone. Think about Israel is saving lives today in Los Angeles, California, by an invention that they created themselves. Bearded rabbis in Jerusalem came up with the Waze app. Nobody knows that. So they're affecting the world. So that's the first piece of the puzzle. The second piece of the puzzle is spiritual. And the reason I put the technology one first is because it's much easier to see it. Much easier. Because you see the advances, medical, keep going. Okay, solar. Who invented solar? Israel. Nobody knows that. Solar. I see solar on your lamps out there. It's an Israeli invention. Who invented the water drip system that's changing the face of Africa today? Israel. So they've affected agriculture, they've affected lights on your parking lot, and a whole lot more. So think about the changes come to our lives and the blessings. So it's easy to tell the technology side of Israel. The hard one is spiritual. So you have to dig in and say, okay, what's going on? Barna, a very credible group of people who do a lot of research, came up with an amazing discovery, I guess, all the things that they went and interviewed people. 21% of Jewish millennials today believe Jesus is Messiah. That's staggering, Pastor. That we are seeing a reawakening in the Jewish people. It's a reawakening. My driver who drove me last week was a Messianic Jew who loves Jesus. I don't remember that 10 years ago. I'm meeting them left and right today in Israel. Many rabbis, like Rabbi Shor, who lives in Seattle, Washington, one of the greatest scholars that I've ever met, real Jewish Yemeni rabbi who came to my home, loves Jesus, and can take you through scriptures of the Old Covenant. You are so convinced you'll have your head spinning.
This is powerful. Now, we have a few more minutes, and I want you to tell us something. What are the things from prophetic writings? What are the things that must happen?
Well, again, what I was saying, technology, because the Bible says knowledge shall increase. We have to see a revival in Israel, which we are seeing today. I think we've just seen the beginning of it, but persecution in the church. These are the things we have to look for, because that's going to spark something inside the church. So when you see revival in Israel, the following thing is revival within the body of Christ. But revival never comes, Pastor, without persecution. The Jewish people today are thriving for one reason. The whole world hates them. Why are they advancing technologically? Why are they advancing in everything? Because they're under pressure. They have no choice. If they don't advance, it's over. Israel will not even exist or survive. It's that they go together. And I believe persecution will come to the church. I don't know in what form or how and when, but that's the thing that if you look at the three headlines of prophecy, technology, knowledge shall increase. That covers a big area. Israel coming to some type of where the wind begins to blow on them spiritually in Ezekiel. And now we're seeing like a resurrection of, and especially the amazing need of Israel today for the evangelical support. Today, I read an article this morning in the Post. They are a little worried about the millennials among evangelicals who are not as supportive of Israel as their parents. So people in parliament in Israel at the Knesset are now having to come up with some new ideas to win over the young generation. Because they said in this article I read today that the younger generation is not as acquainted with the Bible as their parents. The minute you become acquainted with the Bible, you're in. You're pro-Israel. You can't say it any other way. So they're winning them slowly, and they have new things that maybe you and I can be involved with someday, and LoveWorld. But now we are seeing something amazing. We're seeing an acceptance of the gospel because they see evangelicals are we are their only hope. Look what just happened against Israel in the last few days because of Trump declaring Jerusalem as their capital. Who knows where this is going to go? It could inflame cities all over the Arab world. But still, the solid rock behind Israel today, evangelicals, worldwide. And more so today according to an article that was written about a week ago, it's not just American evangelicals. The majority of them today are African and Oriental, of all things. There's a growing number of evangelicals in Africa and Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, all that part of the world, including India. So Israel is being encouraged, strengthened, because the evangelical vote can affect so much.
All right, we'll be back in a few seconds.
This is your Love World.
Now, Pastor Benny, I want you to talk to Christians who live in Israel, Israeli Christians, Jewish Christians. What should they do in these seemingly difficult times where they're placed in this kind of situation with what's happening today?
Well, I would say this. First of all, I would say to every Christian living in the Holy Land and beyond the Holy Land, and Arabs that live in that part of the world and other parts of the world, number one, Jesus loves all. Israel is used as the voice of prophecy, but God is not anti-Palestinian by any means.
And God is not Jewish.
And he's not Jewish, exactly. But to fulfill his plan, he is using the nation of Israel today. And some people, sadly, when you talk Israel, they think you're talking politics. No, no, no. When we talk Israel, we're talking Bible. That's all it is. It's just Bible. We see it as the fulfillment of prophecy. But God has a great plan also for the Arabic people. In fact, most of the people getting saved today within Israel are Palestinians, which is very, very exciting.
And many Palestinians were used in saving many Israelis.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I would tell you all, look, number one, at what is happening in Israel when it comes to technology. How is that fulfilling Bible prophecy? Number two, look and see what's happening spiritually, and there's a lot happening spiritually within Israel today. And thirdly, persecution has to come to preserve the remnant. Because the remnant of the body of Christ cannot be preserved without, look at what happened in the book of Acts and throughout history. Always persecution brings people together and empowers us. Today there's a revival in Aleppo, Syria for one reason, persecution. And I heard that from a friend of mine named Yvette, who works in there. So what I would say to you is this: prepare for the coming of the Lord. And I believe this is why the Lord has raised LoveWorld. You know, when you and I think about God bringing us together, why did it not happen 10 years ago or 5? Why now? Because now we have dedicated our lives, you and I, and a lot of our sweet partners, to declare the gospel with power. The world needs that power. A few days ago, I had a call from Sid Roth, who bought the LaCie network that was covering all of Israel. And every cable home gets LaCie, which now is a different name, of course. He said, I won the programs you talked about, where you said you will have healing meetings live, you and Pastor Chris. I said, yes. He said, I won them in every home in Israel. I said, why? He said, we can't win them with preaching. We only win them with power and demonstrations of the Spirit, because the Jews seek what? A sign. So he said, we have to show them signs and wonders. Then we can bring the gospel in. And he has an amazing plan. He said, Benny, what I want to do is I want to show services of Pastor Chris and yourself and come in with 4 small segments where Messianic Jewish rabbis will declare the gospel. So
Interesting.
here we are going to show the power of God. They're going to show us ministering the word, but it'll be Jewish, Messianic Jewish rabbis basically giving an invitation to receive Messiah. That they'll say, I'm a rabbi, I'm a Jewish rabbi. I thought, wow, what an amazing thing. Think, why would Sid Roth call me a few days ago? Because he realizes this is the time to win Israel and the Arabs. So we are coming into an amazing time of revival. And I'm going to ask you to really stand with us. LoveWorld is not an accident. It's not an afterthought of God. LoveWorld is on time. It's something God is doing today and opening supernatural doors for the network. So, Pastor, think about this. Things are heating up out there, politically and otherwise. But think about how it's heating up here, what God is doing with us. Why am I sitting with you today, talking about Israel? Most people don't even know that I have all this knowledge in me. Well, that's in my blood because I'm from there. That's my interest. I love the Bible, but I love the fact I'm born there. Wow, that to me is a great plus for my life because I can help people understand not only the biblical side of things, but the historical side of things to see how God is involved in it. Because if you see the historical, you will ignore the Lord. If you see the Lord, you'll not get the full picture of where Israel fits in his plan. And that's why today you have, sadly, a move called replacement theology because they can't put the two together.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Israel is no longer important, and what do? They mess up the whole, well, they can no longer really understand the Bible. So, Pastor, you and I have a massive, massive responsibility. Because frankly, very few are declaring this message completely. And today there's a large group of Christians that believe they are Israel. All the prophecies have to do with them spiritually. So it's our time to educate them that the Bible doesn't say that. Let's see what the word. God for your life. I thank God for your ministry, the amazing anointing on your life, the amazing love you've shown towards Israel too. And that's why you came a few days ago and did such an amazing job talking to high officials and so forth. So support LoveWorld. Become a partner of LoveWorld. This is our time, people.
Praise God. Pastor Benny, thank you so much. Thank you. God bless you.
This is your Love World.
For your gift of